What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sound Stories with Byron Nash. Happy to have you here. I wanted to thank everybody for checking out episode number 1. And we want to keep this train moving and tap into all things music, rock and roll, hip hop, you name it. We're just going to be talking about things that I love, the bands that I love, the artists that I love. Real quick, I wanted to thank everyone for sharing, for the DMs, for the kind messages, the text. And also just make sure you subscribe because that's what's going to build the channel up and reach more people who are music nerds like myself. So let's get this thing started. This episode, I wasn't thinking about naming them, but something about starting with this made a lot of sense to me. So I wanted to call it Out of the Cellar into the Music Industry. And the reason why I gave it that title is because a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get into playing in bands and doing music and things like that? Honestly, I got into the music industry sort of by accident. So, I grew up as a little kid, listening to all this different music, acting like a little rock star, wanting to be all those things, and grew up on MTV, healthy dose of MTV. And there was an era where hair metal bands were sort of dominating it. They were kind of on the come up, and then they just were like the main thing you saw all the time. But early on, I really got into Motley Crue and Ratt, and I loved Wanted Man. I mean, Round and Round was the big one, but Wanted Man was like my jam. So I used to have this little boombox, and I would wait and try to time it because I didn't have like a collection or anything. All my things were like recorded off of other cassettes that people had. And I would wait, and then it would come on MTV, and I'd run over and like miss the beginning and try to record it so I could build up my playlist, if you will, of music that I really liked. All those bands really stood out to me. There was something about the energy of like, back then they were considered heavy metal. Now it sounds pretty light, but really that's what it was. It was like Judas Priest, AC/DC, Ozzy, Ratt, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Accept, all those types of bands at the time. Scorpions, that was all considered heavy metal. Circus Magazine, all those groups were, on the cover of that Kiss. But I was really into Ratt. And then that was the spark. That was the spark where, at the time I was listening to Michael Jackson and Prince, and because they were on MTV as well. But my mom's collection was crazy, so I was also listening to Al Jarreau and Tina Marie and Hall & Oates, Chicago, and then everything that was on the radio at the time was probably, I'm saying 5th grade-ish. I'd say like the Police, Cyndi Lauper, Lionel Richie was crushing everybody. A lot of pop stuff, Madonna. So I was listening to all of that at the same time. But then there was this gravitational pull towards like hair and rock metal and heavy metal and stuff like that. That was the beginning. So I'm riding that train, get into some heavier stuff, become like a preteen/teen, start to buy my own records. And I used to share a bedroom with my brother, and my mom was kind of like, all right, well, you probably need your own bedroom. So I got my own bedroom at 15, and I decked it out pretty much how my place looks now. Some things don't change. And, the posters and everything was neat, and I knew where I wanted it to be. But I had a few Ozzy records, and I had Ratt. I had Out of the Cellar. And I think I had, I forget the other one, the gray one with the hot girl, and she's getting dressed and stuff like that. But those were my jams, and I listened to every single one of those records. I had an Yngwie record too, and Iron Maiden Live. So that was like sort of my universe of what I owned. But that Ratt record was a big deal because, puberty, you got Tawny Katane on the cover looking all crazy hot and stuff, and that imagery was a big deal for 80s rock, like the hot girl and the red heels, and even a lot of the guitar ads were, they had a girl holding the guitar or a woman holding the guitar. It wasn't guys, it was like hot girls, So I just kind of came up around that whole ideology and imagery, So that was really impactful. Fast forward, well, before that, I got teased like a mother. High school was terrible for me. Like being a black kid in Baltimore, liking skateboard, like I was a skater, liking the music that I liked, Whitesnake and all that stuff. Brothers weren't having it. Kids were really mean. It was a tough time to be a black kid liking rock music back then. But I never faltered. I liked what I liked, even if I had to take some heat for it. So that became my identity. A lot of that music shaped who I was and who I wanted to be, just like many metalheads and rockers, like whatever you find. If you're into the alternative scene, The Cure and all that stuff, REM, that was your bag, right? Fast forward many, many, many years later. I'm going to school for art. I'm in Pittsburgh now, and I'm going to school for graphic design, but it was before like computers were the main way of doing graphics. So I was just an artist doing painting, ceramics, 2D design, all types of stuff, sculpture. And there was a magazine called Rock and Roll Reporter that I used to read when I would go to Ides and different music stores around town and get CDs and whatever. So I would always grab it. It was a monthly free magazine. They used to call them rags back in the day. And kind of covered a lot of local music. And then like there would be some like major, like maybe Aerosmith was on the cover or something like that every now and again. And I was a fan, and I graduated community college for graphic design. And I came out and I was teaching ceramics. And then I had the magazine and saw on the back that they were looking for a graphic designer intern. Totally stoked, applied, get the internship. Then I get there, and I realize, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. At this point, I'm older than all the kids that were doing design work and interning. I didn't look like I was older, but I was a single dad. Like I was way older in life than they were. So I was really behind in understanding how to apply art with the computer. Paint my face off, sucked at the computer. So I'm like trying to figure it out, and it's not really translating, and I'm getting worried that I'm going to lose this internship. And I really liked it because they had Metallica posters and movie posters, and it just looked like the office was what my bedroom would look like, so I just felt really comfortable there. But I was getting a little spooked about my time left because I could feel the clock ticking. And one day the owner, Vinny, comes in. He's kind of like this wrangly guy with the cigarette and the dark glasses. It's total character, good guy. And he gave me a really big chance. Comes in, and where we were all located in the back, sort of like you walked up these steps and there were like 4 computers, and that's where the interns chugged away at their work. He comes back and he's like, hey, any of you guys know anything about the hair metal band Ratt? At this point, it's like 97. Hair band is way past their heyday. Grunge did its thing and kind of crushed anyone that was in that vein. So a lot of those bands were really struggling at that point to keep it all going. They went from like stadiums and arenas to like clubs and bars. So it wasn't like their heyday, but still, I love Ratt like it was their heyday. And, at this time, I'm a dreadlock kid. I have my Rasta hat. I'm like all into like my jam band stuff and festival scene along with my metal. And he was like, yeah, does anyone know anything about Ratt? And I just kind of sheepishly was like, I do. And everyone kind of paused, and then they just bursted out laughing because I was the only black guy there. Nothing about me screamed that I listened to metal and rock. I look like a serious, like Marley, like, Fish, Deadhead guy. But I was all those things. So he pulls me in his office and he's like, well, what do you exactly know about like Ratt? Tell me what you know. And I just started blurting out facts. I was like, this album came out this time, and this guy is related to this person. And then Motley Crue was in the One Hit Man video, and they were dressed as the cops. And then Milton Berle was the uncle or godfather of the one guitar player, Robin Crosby, all this stuff. And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What else do you know about Ratt or any of these or any music? Like, what is your bag? What are you into? And I started talking to him more. And then he was like, And he goes, well, have you ever written a CD review? And I was like, I haven't. Actually, I have. Before that, I was getting these kind of like prerequisite credits. And there was a place where, like, I guess it was like a lunch break, but the people for their lunch break would watch the news. And I'm like, I didn't want to watch the news. So I would just stay on the computer and learn to type and just kind of work on my computer skills so I can skill myself up. So in order to practice, I was just writing CD reviews about the metal or the music I was listening to at the time, just for myself. It wasn't for anyone to see. It was just for me to do that because I've always liked writing. I was writing poetry and stuff like that too. So he was like, if you have anything, bring it in. At this time, I don't even think email was out yet, or maybe it just started, but I didn't have it. So I bring in my copies. They read it over. They're like, "Oh, this is pretty good. You need some work, but if you're interested, we can set up an interview with Ratt." And I was like, "What?" So I practiced my writing. They set the interview up. It's going to be in person. They're in town. I think they played at Metropole in the Strip, and I was supposed to meet them at a hotel and interview them. So I thought it was going to be in the lobby, and I'm like in this bar lobby, and I'm super nervous. Never did this before. Afraid to meet everybody. Don't know what it's going to be. Are they going to be mean? Or are they not going to like me? Or are they going to be trashed? Who knows, right? And I'm sitting in this bar, just kind of waiting. Like these really cool people come over and they start talking to me, and come to find out they were backup singers for Rod Stewart. They had just finished performing with him out at Star Lake, and Cyndi Lauper had opened up, and they were just like, "Oh, we thought you were in a band." I'm like, "No, wish I was in a band." So I'm chatting with them, and then Cyndi Lauper walks in, and I'm like, "What? This is crazy." But not for me. She was just there because they were staying at the same hotel. And then the drummer for Ratt, Bobby Blotzer, comes rolling in, and he was like, "Hey, are you Byron? Are you here for the interview?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, they're upstairs waiting for you. Just go upstairs to their hotel." I'm like, what you mean?" So I reluctantly catch this elevator up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've never done this before. These are like, for me, music heroes and a big inspiration of, I was playing broomsticks to these guys. And I go and walk in, and just like the doors cracked, and I like knock, and I was like, "It's Byron from the Rock and Roll Reporter." And it's Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini. Yo, I was like, inside, holy shit. Outside, I was like, "Hey guys, nice to meet you. I'm Byron." And I'm like, are they going to be like, who is this kid? And I sit down with them, and we proceed to have a pretty good interview. And there were certain questions that my boss wanted me to ask, like, what's it like being a band that was big and then now grunge comes through? What are your opinions of that? That is not a question I wanted to ask them. I didn't want to trigger anything. And I've watched what happened with the industry. I could see that being a really painful thing. So in that interview, I learned that you have to, as an interviewer and as a journalist, you really have to care about the people. And I didn't want the dirt. I didn't want to trigger them to get like a good story. I wanted the truth. So there were certain questions I actually crossed out and then reframed them in a way that seemed to make them open up, and the interview went great. So now I'm sitting in this hotel room with these guys, and I have my record from when I'm 15. And I'm like, "Hey guys, would you sign my record?" Right? And they're like, "Yeah, no problem. You care if we smoke weed?" And I was like, "No." So just imagine me, super fan of Ratt, first interview ever in person, and Warren DeMartini and Stephen Pearcy roll a joint on my record from when I was 15 years old, and I got to talk to these guys. The same guys that I got teased for liking bands who tease their hair. I'm sitting with them, and something clicked. That was the beginning. It didn't even matter if I played on stage or if I had a band, which I didn't have any of those things yet. But I knew I wanted to be around that stuff. I wanted to be around that energy. I wanted to be around artists. I wanted to be around people who created. And I'll never forget that when people ask me like, "Oh, when did you start playing? How'd you get in the industry?" I got in the industry as an accidental journalist. I was a graphic designer who didn't know what he was doing and just happened to be such a fan who liked to write, knew something about a band. Had I not known anything about Ratt, that might have never have happened. I maybe never would have taken that path. So it's one of the most awesome stories in my life because, when you're dreaming and you're young and things seem impossible, or it seems like other people have stuff you don't, especially if you come from some hard times, you don't really think it's possible for you. And for all of that to come together and Ratt be the entry to the music business, from there, I literally stopped doing graphics. I was still sort of like an art director, if you will, but I started covering, reviewing local CDs. And then I got better at that. And then I kind of jumped up and became local music editor, which got me into the local scene of knowing what bands were hitting, who were these clubs. Music stores had ads in our newspaper, so I knew all of the music stores, and it just put me in a network in a totally different way. I'm like, oh, I just need to be in the mix everywhere. So there were times I was going to shows like 3 times a week just so could integrate myself into the scene. And at that time, to be completely honest, there weren't a lot of African Americans in the scene, in the rock part of the scene. So it was kind of easy to stand out. It's like, oh, that's that dude who works at the magazine. And I started my first band by putting an ad in the paper looking for a bass player. And then the first person who ended up reaching out ended up being the editor who used to correct the articles. Had no idea. So that was the beginning. My first band was called Sporadic, and that kind of thrust me into the world of rock and roll. After being a music editor, like local music editor, I became managing editor, where I was basically helping run the magazine and coming up with creative ideas, with EK, Ed Couchtailor, who was like, that was my guy. That at that point, I came up under him, and he really trusted me and invested in me and showed me the way from, how to interview people, understanding photos, understanding print media, just the whole business. And, then it got to the point where I was like able to call record labels, like, as if I knew what was going on. Like, that barrier to entry was a big deal back then. So if you have someone who was a mentor who trusted you with their contacts, you can't mess that up. So I learned a lot through that experience. And I think the biggest thing for me is don't stop dreaming. Always believe in yourself. Even if you can't tell how you're going to get there, you can get to where you want to go. And, don't bend when people tell you what you are isn't who you should be. Like if you like hip hop, you're a rapper, you're a metalhead, you're a whatever, be it all the way, be who you are. And I'm all of those things, but I just never really fit in. And so not fitting in is where I fit in the best. So that's my story of how I got into the music business. And, thank you, Ratt. Thank you, Warren DeMartini and Stephen Pearcy, for that opportunity and being so kind and gracious, and for signing my record, which has hung on my wall ever since. So, guys, this has been awesome. I feel like I got a bunch of friends out there that I can't wait to see you at concerts or like just connect with you online. So thank you for your connection. Thank you for your support. Make sure you subscribe, share the video, leave a comment. Let's chat music, all things music, and have a little guitar thing at the end here for you. Thank you. Peace.